He was kicked off the bus, labeled a hat hero, and humiliated in front of dozens of witnesses, all because of his red MAGA hat. The driver was confident he had scored an easy victory, unaware that the passenger he dismissed was actually the county's new sheriff. One video, captured by a random bystander, turned this conflict into a national scandal. What the hero did next shocked even the most seasoned observers, but let's start from the beginning. Early morning, the cold seeps to the bone. At the bus stop, a crowd huddles together, wrapped in scarves and coats. Among them stands a man wearing a bright red MAGA hat. This is John Randolph, a sturdy 45-year-old with a confident gaze and calm demeanor. His hat immediately draws attention. Some whisper, others frown angrily. But John remains unbothered. A bus pulls up to the stop. The driver, a gaunt man with a weary face and a baseball cap that reads, "Hope for All," scans the crowd. His eyes lock on John and freeze. The sight of the red hat ignites a flash of anger in him, as if he's staring at a public enemy. The doors hiss open, and John steps forward to board. The driver suddenly thrusts out an arm. "Where do you think you're going?" he snaps. "To the bus," John replies calmly, raising an eyebrow. "Or do you have new rules here?" "You're not getting on this bus," the driver barks, pointing at the hat. "We have decent passengers here, not people like you." The crowd falls silent. Someone pulls out a phone to record the scene. John pauses, looking at the driver with mild surprise. "Let me get this straight," he says evenly. "My hat is now a one-way ticket." "Exactly," the driver sneers. "Find another bus, hat man." John tilts his head slightly, his eyes briefly lingering on the driver's Hope for All cap. "Funny," he muses. "Your Hope for All seems to exclude people like me. Interesting philosophy." The crowd stirs. Someone mutters, "Is this for real?" Another voice calls out, "Can he even do that?" A young man in a hoodie films everything, adding loudly, "Yo, this is America, isn't it?" The driver's frown deepens, but he stands his ground. "Look," the driver spits. "You can talk all you want. This bus isn't for you. Go find another." John calmly reaches into his pocket and pulls out his phone, turning on the camera. "How do you think your employers will feel about this service?" he asks. "Or should I just post it online? Seems like it'll get a lot of views." The crowd buzzes with energy. Almost half the people are now recording the scene. The driver pales but slams the door shut with defiance and drives away, leaving John standing at the stop. John slides his phone back into his pocket and glances at the onlookers. "Well," he says with a faint smile, "let's hope the next bus is a little less selective." The crowd bursts into laughter, and the guy with the camera shouts, "This dude's a legend!" The video of the incident begins to spread online, and John knows the day is just getting started. For the driver, though, it's already over. After the morning conflict, John made it to work without any trouble, taking the next bus on his route. His usual commute led him to the county sheriff's office, a stately building with white columns and an imposing facade. John's office, spacious and tastefully simple, reflected his character. A US flag on the wall, a sturdy wooden desk, and a few chairs for visitors. A steaming cup of coffee awaited him on the desk. Sitting down, John dove into his routine, reviewing reports, planning events, but the morning incident lingered in his mind. He realized that the bus driver wasn't just hot-headed. His actions were an overt act of discrimination against someone for their beliefs, symbolized by the red MAGA hat. A couple of hours later, a knock on the door interrupted his work. It was Brian, a young deputy, holding a phone. "Boss, you need to see this," Brian said, handing over the device. On the screen was a video taken by someone in the crowd. The incident at the bus stop had spread across social media like wildfire. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments. The responses were fiery. Blatant discrimination. "This is outrageous. How is someone like this allowed to work with the public?" "Looks like that driver's become a local celebrity," John remarked, handing the phone back. "What are people saying?" "There have been several complaints," Brian replied. "Folks are angry. They're demanding an investigation." John set down his coffee and stood with resolve. "Good. I'll handle this personally. Something tells me our driver is still on the job." After lunch, John returned to the same bus stop. This time, there were more people, many of whom clearly recognized him. The whispers began before he even arrived. Some people looked on with respect, others with curiosity, but all were keen to see what would happen next. As John approached, a few pulled out their phones, ready to record. The bus roared into view, pulling up with a loud hiss. It was the same driver. When he saw John, his body visibly tensed. His face turned red, but he tried to maintain his composure. The doors opened and the driver barked. "Oh, it's you again! You're not getting on!" John stepped toward the door calmly, raising an eyebrow as he fixed his gaze on the driver. "Perfect," he said, pulling out a small notebook. "What's your name, sir?" "My name? Why do you need that?" the driver asked, his voice quivering slightly. "Because I'm the new county sheriff," John said, his tone calm but steely. "And you've just violated several laws, including discriminating against a passenger based on their political beliefs." The crowd erupted. Laughter, cheers, applause, and a few shouted remarks. "This is gold! He's in trouble now! This is better than yesterday's video." The driver's strained smile turned into an awkward grimace. He adjusted his cap nervously, his hands shaking. Look, this is just a misunderstanding," he stammered, but John cut him off. "A misunderstanding?" John repeated, tilting his head slightly. "You've now twice denied a passenger access to public transportation. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a pattern." I didn't know who you were," the driver muttered, clearly grasping the severity of the situation. "And now you do," John said, his tone icy. "And if you don't want your employer to hear about this through official channels, I suggest you reconsider your behavior." The crowd roared with laughter and applause. Someone shouted, "Finally, justice! This guy's teaching a master class." The driver's face flushed crimson. He seemed torn between trying to explain himself or simply driving away to escape further humiliation. John tucked his notebook back into his pocket, turned to the crowd, and with a slight smile said, "Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. I hope your day is as eventful as mine." The crowd cheered and laughed. The young man with the camera approached John, hand extended. "You're a legend, man. This video's gonna go viral." John shook his hand with a measured smile. "Glad I could help," he said. "But honestly, I'd prefer it if situations like this didn't happen at all." As the crowd dispersed, still buzzing with excitement, the second video of the incident began spreading online. John returned to the sheriff's office, knowing that the driver would never forget this day. For John, it was just another part of the job. For the driver, it was likely the beginning of the end. The crowd at the bus stop froze. Some gasped, others whispered nervously, and a few broke into loud laughter. The bus driver, hearing John's words, immediately lost all semblance of confidence. His face turned crimson, as if he'd just realized he'd publicly humiliated himself in front of millions of potential viewers. This must be some kind of mistake," the driver stammered, gripping the handrail for support. His voice trembled. "Of course, sir. Please, come aboard. He hurriedly swung the doors wide open, as if trying to undo his earlier actions. But John didn't move. He stood calmly, watching the driver with an expression of composed scrutiny. His quiet presence only amplified the driver's panic. No, John said firmly, his voice clear and steady, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "There's no need now. Let's finish this the way it started. People should see how you treat passengers. Besides, the video's already gone viral." The driver's face fell. His eyes widened as the weight of John's words struck him like a hammer. He glanced around the crowd as if seeking support, but all he found were people recording him on their phones or whispering amongst themselves. Sympathy, it seemed, was in short supply. The crowd began to stir. Some laughed openly, others clapped. A teenager in the back shouted, "Oh yeah, this is TikTok gold!" John turned briefly to the teen, offering a faint smile before refocusing on the driver. His calm demeanor, paired with his unwavering confidence, made the driver's flustered state even more pronounced. "You know," John began, crossing his arms, "I've always believed that honesty and respect for others are the foundation of any job. But you've clearly chosen a different path. Tell me, was this your personal decision or company policy?" This remark sent another wave of laughter rippling through the crowd. The driver opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He looked like he wished the earth would swallow him whole. "Look, I didn't know who you were," the driver finally mumbled, clinging to the handrail like a lifeline. His voice was shaky, his gaze darting nervously between John and the onlookers. "So if I were just another passenger, you would have carried on the same way?" John asked, tilting his head slightly. His tone was gentle, but the steel in his words was unmistakable. No, you misunderstood," the driver stammered, forcing a weak, awkward smile that only made things worse. I made a mistake. That's all. I'm sorry." "Sorry?" John repeated, raising an eyebrow as though weighing the sincerity of the apology. "Forgive me, but I'm not sure that's enough for everyone watching right now." The crowd burst into louder laughter. Someone shouted from the back, "Hey, why don't you fire him on the spot?" John stepped closer to the door, but still didn't board the bus. His posture remained relaxed, hands in his pockets, though his gaze was laser-focused on the driver. "You see," John continued, "I don't think you fully grasp the gravity of this situation. You didn't just insult me. You insulted the very idea of equality, a principle that, as far as I know, should be the cornerstone of your job. Public transportation is for everyone, isn't it?" The crowd hummed with approval. More clapping followed. The driver, realizing he was backed into a corner, muttered weakly, "You're right. I was wrong." John nodded, satisfied with the admission, but still didn't let the moment pass. "You know," he said, tilting his head thoughtfully, "I could just get on the bus and let this go. But then you wouldn't learn anything, would you? And I believe lessons are important." The crowd erupted in laughter again. The teenager filming shouted, "This guy's Teacher of the Year! Keep rolling, everyone!" The driver's shoulders slumped. His body language screamed defeat as he visibly shrank behind the wheel. He looked like he might quit on the spot just to escape the humiliation. John took a step back, surveying the crowd before addressing them directly. "I hope you all remember this moment," he said, his voice carrying authority. "This is a prime example of how not to treat people." The crowd responded with enthusiastic applause. Someone shouted, "This is better than any TV drama!" John tucked his phone into his pocket, glanced at the driver one last time and said, "Good luck to you, sir, and please, consider a career change." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the driver in stunned silence, surrounded by dozens of cameras and judgmental stares. The video of this scene quickly became the latest social media sensation. Comments poured in. "This is how you put people like him in their place. Sheriff for president in 2024. John Randolph is a legend." As for the driver, he knew his career was over. Meanwhile, John returned to the sheriff's office, confident he'd done everything he could to set things right and send a clear message about fairness and respect. By evening, the bus driver incident had become a local sensation. The video of John's composed demeanor and the driver's complete meltdown spread across social media, amassing millions of views. Major news outlets picked up the story, running headlines like "Sheriff stands up to discrimination" and "MAGA-Hat versus bus driver, who wins?" In the comments, viewers expressed their admiration and outrage. "John is a real hero. Now that's a masterclass in composure. The driver better start looking for a new job." The transportation company wasted no time responding. As the video went viral, they released an official statement expressing regret over the incident and reaffirming their commitment to zero tolerance for discrimination. By the end of the day, the driver had been terminated, and the news of his firing became yet another hot topic online. The next day, the sheriff's office was packed with reporters. Cameras, microphones, and notepads were all aimed at John, who stood confidently behind the podium. Dressed in a sharp black suit, he still wore the signature red MAGA hat, now a symbol of resilience. "Thank you for being here," he began calmly, his eyes scanning the room. His voice was steady, carrying a quiet strength that commanded attention. I didn't intend to become the subject of headlines, but sometimes life makes that choice for you." The room fell silent, every journalist hanging on his words. "We all have the right to our opinions and the freedom to express them," John continued. "Every person is entitled to their beliefs, whether through words, actions, or, in my case, a hat. Personal biases should never lead to discrimination, especially in public spaces, even if someone wears a hat you don't like." The room erupted in applause. Some journalists even stood to show their support. John maintained his composure, though he felt a quiet satisfaction knowing his words resonated deeply, not just with those in the room, but with thousands of viewers watching the live broadcast. Not far away, the former bus driver stood awkwardly against a wall, surrounded by reporters and cameras. His face betrayed a mix of shame and anger. When pressed with direct questions, he offered curt responses, clearly eager to escape the spotlight. John's story became a national symbol of the fight for respect and equality. People from across the country flooded social media with comments. "We need leaders like this. John did what so many of us dream of doing. Respect to this man. He's a true American." The public's reaction wasn't limited to applause. John's video became a key talking point on television and online forums. Some activists even urged him to run for office, claiming that people like him should be in positions of power. But John remained humble. When asked by a reporter how he felt about being called a people's hero, he simply smiled and replied, "I'm just doing my job. If that inspires others, then I guess I'm on the right path." As the press conference ended, John stepped outside the sheriff's office, where a large crowd awaited him. People cheered, clapped, and called out his name. Some wanted to shake his hand, while others shouted, "Way to go, John!" Remaining true to his composed nature, John smiled and addressed the crowd. "Thank you all. Remember this: dignity always wins." With those words, he began walking toward his car. The applause didn't stop, and the young man, the same one who had filmed the bus stop incident, shouted, "John, you're already a TikTok legend. When's the next episode?" John turned slightly, smiling over his shoulder, and replied, "I hope there won't be a next time, but if there is, I'll be ready." The crowd erupted in laughter as John got into his car and drove away. For him, the day ended in triumph, while for the bus driver, it was a lesson he'd likely never forget. John Randolph's story became an enduring example of how dignity, composure, and confidence can overcome even the most blatant injustice.